Thank you to Sweetwater for sponsoring this video and supporting my channel. If you make music, then you know that chords and melodies are super important, and if you have an Atom SQ, then today I want to show you how you can play and program both of these in a super easy and effortless way. Hey there, I'm Ivan Calder and welcome back to another video. Okay, so last week I put out my deep dive into this here, the Atom SQ. And in that video, I practically went over every detail to get you familiar with how it works. But in this video, I wanna focus on one very specific application, which is how to use the Atom SQ to play or program chords, chord progressions, and melodies. Regardless of how far you are in your music journey, I'm sure you understand the importance of chords and melodies in a beat or song. If you're just starting out, then unfortunately things can get a little confusing, but luckily for us, we now have tools like the SQ that can help with this learning process. The SQ hack that I'm about to show you today isn't super advanced, but it is really handy, and especially for beatmakers who are working within a scale or key and they want to find chords and melodies to fit their production. Before we get started though, I do want to take a moment to thank the sponsor for this video, Sweetwater. Sweetwater is the largest online retailer of musical instruments and pro audio equipment in the United States and the place where I've gotten most of my gear over the years. Not only are they a one-stop shop for all of your studio needs, but they also have amazing customer service. So if you're in the market for a new piece of gear, say maybe a new Atom SQ, then consider heading over to sweetwater.com. Thank you to Sweetwater for sponsoring this video, and without further ado, let's jump right in. Okay, so jumping into Studio One, the first thing that I want you to notice is the pads on the SQ and how the bottom row here is labeled with numbers 1 through 16. Now you might be thinking, well yeah, that's just so you know how many you have, and you're right, but let's dig deeper. With the SQ plugged in, go ahead and activate an instrument track in Studio One or whatever DAW you're using. Next, go to the instrument mode on the SQ and then click the right page button 3 times until you get to the pads page. And once you're here, you're gonna wanna change the layout of the pads from keyboard to scale only. Finally, use these next 2 buttons up here to set your scale and your root note. Typically, you would pick whatever scale you need for your song or beat, but for this video, I'm just gonna pick something random, so let's just go with D sharp or E flat major. So basically what we've done at this point is make it so all of the pads on the Atom fall within a scale, E flat major in my case. So then no matter what pads I play, I will always be within the key that I chose. In other words, the SQ will not let me play a wrong note. Okay, so at this point we have everything set up to create chords and melodies. We'll circle back around to the melodies in a little bit, but for now let's first talk about the chords. Chords can be as complicated as you want them to be, but the most basic chord that we have is called a triad because it contains 3 notes. Within a scale, a triad is created by stacking or combining the first, the third, and the 5th note of a scale. Once you get familiar with a traditional keyboard, then it's not too hard to memorize some scales and then create triads from there. But if you have an Atom SQ, then that process really just becomes a piece of cake. Because we have our pads laid out in a scale-only mode, that means that each of these numbers on the bottom, especially for the first 8, are not just pad labels anymore, but also scale note indicators. What I mean by this is that pad number 1 is now also note number 1 in the scale that you chose. Pad number 2 is note number 2 of the scale you chose, and then so on and so forth. If I pull up scalar 2 here and set the E flat major scale, you can verify with me that what I'm saying is true. Pad number 1 is E flat, pad number 2 is F, pad number 3 is G, and so on. What this ultimately means is that to create an E flat major triad chord, all you have to do is press pad number 1, which is our root note, pad number 3, which is the 3rd note of the scale, and pad number 5, which is the 5th note of the scale. What's even better is that if you keep this same shape, you can just move it up the Atom to create the remaining chords. So for example, if you want to create the 2nd chord of this scale, which is F minor, then just move this entire shape up 1. If you want to create the 3rd chord of the scale, G minor, then again, just move the shape up 1 more. And you can do this all the way till the end of the scale. So that is how you play chords easily with the Atom SQ, but it doesn't stop there. Now let's talk about progressions. Oftentimes you'll hear musicians call out chord progressions in numbers, so a 1-4-5, 2-5-1, etc. And usually when they're written down, you see them as Roman numerals. Now what they're basically referring to here is the chord number of a scale. So for example, in a 1-4-5 progression, they are referring to the 1st chord, the 4th chord, and the 5th chord of a scale. Using that knowledge, we can come back to our Atom and play chord progressions easily easily using the same pad numbers from the bottom row. Whenever you play a chord on the SQ using the play one, skip one shape, the first note that you play will always be the chord number of the scale you are in. So for example, that there is an E flat major, yes, but it's also the first chord of the scale. If I move this up one like I showed you before, then this is the second chord of the scale, and so on and so forth. Now once you reach pad number 8, you're technically back to chord number 1, just in a higher octave, but you get the idea. From here though, we can play chord progressions practically without thinking about it. If you want to play a 1-4-5 progression, then just follow the numbers on the pads. What about a 2-5-1? Something to point out here is that this will work regardless of what scale you're in. So to show you, let me switch this over to, let's say, G major. Okay, so now that we know how to play and program chords and chord progressions using the SQ, let's circle back around to the melodies. Now the reason that I left melodies till the end is that often, at least for me, I find that playing or creating a melody is much easier once you have a chord progression to follow. So to show you, let me first program a quick chord progression and then we'll create a melody on top of that. Okay, so let me go ahead and let's see, I'm just gonna create something random here. We're on the scale of G major. Let's see. Okay, so this is what we have, and basically here I programmed a 2-5-1-4 chord progression. Now since the atom is still set in the scale only mode, all I have to really do is experiment with the pads until I find something that I like, because again, there are no wrong notes here. Okay, so let me see if I can just program something really quickly, and I'm gonna use a different VST for this, so here we go. And there we go. And there you have it. That is how you play and program chords, chord progressions, and melodies with the Atom SQ. Now though, I want to hear from you. If you already have an Atom SQ, did you know about this method? And if so, do you use it? And if you don't have one, how do you currently program or play your chords and melodies? Let me know in a comment down below. But that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be linking the Atom SQ down below in the description for your convenience. Thank you once again to Sweetwater for sponsoring this video. And as always, like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you're not already, but I'll see you on the next one.